A very good Friday to you on this challenging week. Friday is Future Day, and that's what we're going to talk about on Interesting Ideas. My name is Stan Houston, and today I'd like to do a little back to the future because, with your permission, I'm going to reminisce and go back to things that I am old enough to remember, all the way back to the Sony Walkman. And here we are. Today I want to talk about the final farewell to the Apple iPod and what that might mean for you and me and for the future that is before us. That'll be the thoughts for today, and hopefully some thoughts to bring into the weekend so that you can improve your life by having greater ideas, greater insight, greater influence, strong and powerful impact, and true income. That's the transformational statement for this program called Interesting Ideas, and it begins right now. Okay, I will date myself by some of the memories that I have, but I had a compliment. I had my Medicare physical for my new doctor here in North Carolina, and she went through all of my stuff, and then she said, "You're very healthy for a man your age. You don't even look your age." Well, that's nice to hear. Well, I do, in many cases, feel my age, but for the most part, I am profoundly blessed with incredible good health and all kinds of energy, and I'm still working hard, 60, 70 hours a week in some cases, and maybe even doing some good in the world. So I'm very fortunate. Now, what I'd like to do is perhaps go back and remind you of the past and what it might mean for the future today. Because last month in May, we celebrated, not really, but we certainly remembered fondly and, in a sense, commemorated the death of the iPod. But not really. So let me tell you the story. Here we go. Many years ago, when my wife and I were, after we had quit some very good jobs and we were doing volunteer mission work around the world in the Southern Caribbean and had taken a substantial cut in pay from a good salary to nothing, because then we had to go out and actually get volunteers to support us and help us and pay the way. So we had very little money. However, we wanted to make sure that our children did not suffer because of our decision. So whenever we could, we did everything we could and used some of the meager savings we had from the sale of our house back in Minnesota, and we would try and do some good things for our children. And one of the things we did was that we were able to buy our daughter, Amy, a Walkman. She thought, the proverbial, "I must be in heaven." She was one of the first, and it was quite expensive at that time. And some of you know what it was. It was a box by Sony. And what you could do is you could take the musical record at that time, which was a small cassette, and you could put it in the box, close the lid, and then you could play your cassette wherever you wanted. And it had no speaker. It went to a set of headphones. And so only you who had the Walkman could hear the music. And obviously you could put in any cassette you wanted. And of course, I was involved in international radio at that time, and I began to see the future because where I was working is, when we played music, we chose it, and we played it at the time that was scheduled on the radio. And so if you wanted to hear that music, you had to tune into our radio station and listen to the music that we played and when we played it. That's the way the world worked. If you wanted to play your own music, you had to go back to your house or your dorm room or wherever, and you had to pull out a large record, or maybe you would actually have a cassette, but then you'd have to put it into a box or a player, and so you could play it then. But it was not terribly convenient to do that because you had to be in the place and you had to put it in that bigger machine and all of that. So some of you are remembering that, and for some of you, it is something that you still remember fondly. And some of you may say, my goodness, that was something else. Well, and before that, we had records, those vinyl records, which of course are now coming back, but they were large plastic and they could warp or bend or break, and of course they wore out, but you could put that on your record machine. That was music. So we had to listen on our record machine, or we had to find a radio station that we hoped would occasionally play the music that we wanted to play. Well, here's what happened. Steve Jobs had invented the Apple computer, and he was doing quite well, but then Apple had its problems, and some of you know the story. Apple fired the founder. Yeah, they fired Steve Jobs, and he was out of a job. Well, obviously, he still owned parts of Apple, but he didn't have a job there, and he went off and did a number of other things, and they turned out to be quite successful. But not as successful as it had been in many ways, and so Apple invited him back to save the company. That's right. Apple was going under. And Steve Jobs, obviously a very creative man, came up with a couple things that saved the company. First of all, the iMac, the Mac, the small computer that you could carry around. And in effect, that was part of the deal. What you could do is you could have a smaller computer with you that you could even carry around and, move it right to your dorm room or into a library. It was still inconvenient, but it was something else to be able to do that. Well, that may have saved Apple Computer, but of course, it was the iPod that saved Apple. And by the way, do you know that the company is no longer called Apple Computer? Because it doesn't make a whole lot of money with its computers. It makes its money in many ways, and all of it came out of Steve Jobs' idea to invent the iPod. And now, many of you know what it is. It was a slim little box that could easily fit in your hand, and what was true is that you could put your own music into the iPod, and then you could carry it with you, and you could play it through your headphones anytime you wanted. And now, you didn't have to have that bulky Walkman and the cassette. All you had to do was have your little iPod with you, and your music, it was always with you, and whether you were someplace riding on a bus or if you were sitting in a park bench, wherever you were, you could play the music. Now, of course, that is so obvious and so common today that we may even forget how powerful that was. It exploded. And of course, the music business could never quite adjust to that. And they still fully haven't. Because music was now digital. And you'd like to be able to sell those CDs, but with the internet and with things like the iPod, it might be a little more difficult to sell those CDs and certainly try and sell those records. The music industry almost died as it was, and really did die as it was, and it had to find new and hopefully more powerful ways using the new technology to do what it does. And it's still dealing with that. So that was the iPod. And there were a variety of them. Now, some of you, and this is very interesting, I do a little test. I've asked people when they say, iPod or iPad now, I say, what does iPod mean? Do you know what it means? iPod. Well, let me tell you. It means, individual or independent, personal, on demand. That means, hey, it was your song that you carried with you. It was just for you, and it was personal. You chose it, and you could put it in your machine, and you could play it any time you wanted. So it was individual, your selection. It was very personal. You had chosen it, and you could listen to it on demand whenever you wanted to. Individual, independent, personal, on-demand music. That's where it came from. Now, that's going to help us figure out what to do in the future. So there you are. Now, what do you think that meant and what happened next? Well, that's going to be part 2 of our story, but we'll do that after we take a brief break. Hey, my name is Stan, and I'm the leader of Interesting Ideas and What It Takes Radio, and we're here to help you perform at your best. Well, thank you for coming back. And it's at about 11 minutes. We probably are going to be done within 20 minutes. And please keep in mind, as I mentioned yesterday, if you would take 15 to 20 minutes every day just to learn some new ideas that would make you interesting, help you think about your subject, your industry, whatever you are, if you will take 15 to 20 minutes every day just to learn something new, you would be surprised how brilliant you will become. I promise you. As one person told me, you, perhaps within 7 years, would be a world-class international expert in your field. Let that sit on your head for a while. Well, here's the story. Of course, what happened is Steve Jobs wasn't ready to just leave it with the iPod. And of course, then the next thing that came out was he said, okay, I've got a place where you can have the music. But what if you not only could have the music on demand, what if you could actually have a small internet computer, a little computer that could link to the internet? And what if you could actually have your own telephone? And so instead of being just an individual, personal, on-demand music source, it could be an individual, personal, on-demand link to the internet, and it could be an individual, carry it with you, on-demand telephone. And he put that together, and of course, that's what has changed the world, and there are probably more smartphones in the world than there are people. And that, of course, is what saved Apple. The iPod gave birth to the iPhone, and you know at least the rest of the story. Now, of course, the problem for Apple is what's next? Well, they tried the iWatch, and that has been up and down, and reasonably so. It's mostly complementary to the smartphone, though I'm very grateful for it because my wife has gone through a medical condition, and actually what is true is that her doctor said that she had to get an iWatch. I said, what's that? He says, that way she can monitor her heart rate anytime. And if there's a problem with her heartbeat, she will know it, and she can press the button, and that rate, her heart condition, will go through the internet, through the cellular, and it will come down in my office. So if you call me, I can know immediately what is happening with her medical condition. And that's true. probably help save her life in some ways. So what will Apple do next? But what we do know is that with artificial intelligence, there's going to be a whole lot of new things that will come out of the combination of iPod stuff, individual, independent, personal on-demand, internet-based, digital-based information and products and services. And your job is to get ready for those incredible changes. So, that's my thoughts for this week. There's a part of me that goes back to fond memories of how delighted my daughter was when she got her Walkman. I'm still trying. I put my iPod, I haven't used it, of course, in many, many years. And I said to my wife, did I remember to pack my old iPod? And she said, Stan, you haven't used it in years, of course. I said, I know, but I was keeping it. I hope I remembered to put it someplace. And she said, well, if you did put it someplace and it was in the moving truck, we'll probably find it someday. But of course, you don't need it today. And of course, all of that is true. It's a sense of nostalgia. But it's also a reminder that, in effect, what this program is all about is helping you, because you will only succeed at the level you want if you will adopt, in some respect, the Jobs mentality, which says, I'm always looking for new ideas in ways that I can improve and innovate and do something different. That's the thought, that's the mindset you have to have. And, of course, you know I'm going to spin it right back to what I'm doing now. Now, do you know why we call it podcasting? Well, you should have it figured out. You've heard podcasts, but again, I ask people, what does podcast mean? Well, I don't know. It's just, I listen to them. I don't know what it means. Okay, here we go. And you have it ready right before you. Here you go. Obviously, when I was a broadcaster, and I was a broadcaster, I was on a big radio station, and we sent programs out through the transmitter and through these huge towers, and people listened to them on their radio. And, of course, the invention of the transistor radio changed the world in many respects, because that made it possible to have inexpensive radios that you could carry with you, and inexpensive radios, relatively, that we could put in your car. But, of course, you still had to listen to what I chose, and you still had to listen to the program when we aired it. Other than that, you couldn't listen to it. Okay, now I don't broadcast anymore. I podcast. I do a program that is personal from me, and it's meant to be personal for you. You only have to listen to it if you want to. You don't have to tune through all of the radio programs and all of the radio and TV channels. You don't have to look for something you'd like to hear or look for something that you want. You can find what you want, and you can listen to it whenever you want, anywhere you want. In fact, you don't even have a radio except in the car, and that will soon be replaced, as we know, by this, what amounts to an iPad in the automobile. And it will be linked not only to the satellite, it will be linked to the internet, and it will be linked to the cellular connections. And there you go. And you can listen to interesting ideas anytime you want, where you want, and whenever it's convenient for you. And then you can press a button and say, Stan, great show. Or you can press a button and say, Stan, that was a stupid program. Why don't you try and do something different? All of that you can do, and you can do it right now, today. There we go. I hope this has been a helpful 20 minutes because, of course, right now, you need to do exactly what I'm saying. You have wisdom, insight, truth. You need to demonstrate what you can do and how good you are. and that people can listen to it, see it, and experience it when they want, on the device they want, whenever it's convenient for them. iPod and podcasting has changed your life and your business, so it's pretty important that you learn a little bit about it. In 22, you have to find a way to either be on the radio or find a way to do exactly what people can do on the radio, which is reach a worldwide audience with their story, with their message, with their offer, with the services they recommend and have, and they can hear it any place, anywhere, anytime in the whole wide world. That's today, and you have to be today getting ready for what that will mean in the future. And you combine that with the coming of artificial intelligence. Wow, things will be different. And we'll talk more about that perhaps next week. But I wish you all the best for this weekend. Thoughts and prayers for our family, for our world, for the situation, for many people who are in deep distress and suffering as a result of the fact that this is indeed, many times, what we say in our own view of life, faith in God, this is a fallen place. It needs a rescuer. It needs people who live in a way that they can help rescue people and rescue the times and make things better. Hopefully you'll be one of those people. All the best and blessings to you. Till next time. Bye for now.